I kept my sales manual. 20 years at the same Toyota store. And when I left, I walked out with the training binder they gave me on day one. 300 pages of scripts, objection handlers, closing techniques, and psychological manipulation tactics that the dealership drilled into every salesperson who walked through the door. I've been sitting on this thing for a while now, wondering if I should talk about it. And then I flipped to page 43, read it again, and realized people need to know what's actually written in here. I sold cars for Toyota for 20 years, and everything I did, every line I used, every technique I ran, every psychological lever I pulled came straight out of this manual. It's not some secret document. Every dealership has one. They just don't show it to customers. And after you hear what's on page 43, you'll understand why. I'm going to walk you through the sections that matter, the ones that cost customers the most money, the ones that are designed to make you say yes when you should be saying no. And I'm going to show you exactly how to counter them. Because once you know the script, once you know what's been drilled into the salesperson standing in front of you, you can't be manipulated by it anymore. Here's what people don't understand about car sales. It's not personality-driven, it's script-driven. Every salesperson on that floor is running the same plays, using the same language, executing the same techniques, and it all comes from the training manual. The good salespeople make it sound natural. The bad ones sound robotic. But they're all reading from the same playbook, and that playbook is designed to do one thing: separate you from as much money as possible while making you feel like you're in control. The greeting and the qualification questions. Page 7. This is where it starts. The manual says, your first interaction with the customer is not about building rapport. It's about qualifying their readiness to buy and identifying their emotional and financial pressure points. That's a direct quote. Not help the customer, not understand their needs, identify their pressure points. That's the actual language in the training manual. The script gives you a list of questions designed to extract information disguised as friendly conversation. What brought you in today? Is gathering motivation. Have you been looking at other dealerships? Is measuring competition. What are you driving now? Is calculating trade equity. When are you looking to make a decision? Is establishing timeline urgency. Every question has a purpose. None of it is small talk. And the manual specifically says to ask these questions casually in a conversational tone so the customer doesn't realize they're being qualified. I used this script for years. I'd walk up to customers, smile, introduce myself, and start running through the questions without them ever knowing they were being interrogated. By the time we walked into the showroom, I had their timeline, their trade situation, their motivation level, and their emotional triggers. And I hadn't even shown them a car yet. If you know this is happening, you shut it down early. When a salesperson starts asking these questions, you recognize the pattern and you stay vague. You don't give up your timeline. You don't discuss your trade. You don't tell them what other dealerships you've been to. You say, I'm just here to look at cars right now. We can talk about the details later. The test drive psychological close. Page 19. This one's insidious. The manual says the test drive is not an evaluation tool for the customer. It's a closing tool for the salesperson. Your job during the test drive is to create emotional ownership so the customer can't imagine leaving without the car. It gives you specific tactics. Encourage the customer to adjust the seat and mirrors to their preference. Have them connect their phone to the Bluetooth. Ask them where they'd take the car first if they bought it. Use possessive language. How do you like your new car? Instead of, how do you like the car? All of it is designed to blur the line between test driving and owning, because once a customer starts thinking of it as theirs, they're mentally committed. And once they're mentally committed, negotiating becomes about justifying the purchase they've already decided to make, not evaluating whether they should make it at all. I'd run this play on every test drive. By the time we got back to the dealership, the customer was already talking about what they'd use the car for, where they'd park it, what their spouse would think. They'd made the emotional leap from considering to owning. And that leap is worth thousands of dollars to the dealership. The counter is simple, but requires discipline. Treat the test drive as pure evaluation. Don't adjust the mirrors. Don't connect your phone. Don't engage with questions about where you'd take it. When they ask, how do you like your new car? You say, I'm still deciding if I'm buying it. You keep the emotional distance that they're trying to collapse. The trade-in lowball and false negotiation. Page 27. This is where it gets ugly. The manual lays out the trade-in strategy in explicit terms. Your goal is to control both sides of the transaction, so the customer can't see where the profit actually is. Lowball the trade, then create the illusion of negotiation by moving numbers that don't matter. It gives you the script. You appraise the trade low. Customer pushes back. You say, "Let me talk to my manager." You leave for 5 minutes. You come back and say, "Good news. We're going to bump your trade value by $1,000. But to make the numbers work, we need to adjust the discount on the new car." And you show them a worksheet where the trade went up and the discount went down, and the net difference is in the dealership's favor. The customer thinks they won because they fought for the trade value and got more. What really happened is, you moved money from one column to another, and the dealership still made the same profit. You just made them feel like they negotiated. I ran this exact play hundreds of times. The manual even tells you how long to stay in the manager's office so it looks like you're fighting for the customer. 5 minutes minimum. Any less and it doesn't seem real. Any more and the customer gets anxious. The only way to beat this is to refuse to negotiate the two transactions together. You say, "I want the price of the new car locked in first, independent of the trade. Then we'll talk about the trade separately." If they won't do it that way, you walk. Because a dealership that insists on bundling the transactions is a dealership that's planning to use the bundle to hide where they're making money. The payment packing technique. Page 31. Here's where the F&I products start getting loaded in. The manual says, never present products as total cost. Always present as monthly payment. Customers are less resistant to small monthly increases than large lump sums. It breaks down the math. A $1,500 extended warranty sounds expensive, but $19 a month over 72 months? That sounds manageable. A $1,200 tire and wheel package? Intimidating? $17 a month? Barely noticeable? The script tells you to stack them. Okay, so with the gap coverage, that's an extra $12 a month, and if we add the extended warranty, that's another $19, and the tire and wheel is $17 more. So we're looking at $548 total. You say it fast. You keep moving. You don't give the customer time to do the math on what they're actually paying. And here's the part that should make you sick. The manual specifically says to add these products by default and make the customer opt out rather than opt in. You don't ask if they want gap coverage. You tell them the payment includes gap coverage. And if they object, then you remove it. But most people don't object because they don't want to seem difficult or they're not paying close enough attention. I watched finance managers pack $6,000 in products into loans using this technique. The customer would sign, thinking they agreed to a $500 payment, not realizing that $60 of that payment was products they didn't ask for and didn't need. When you sit down in F&I before they start presenting anything, you say, "I'm not interested in any additional products. Give me the payment for the vehicle loan only with nothing added." And when they start presenting products, you make them tell you the total cost, not the monthly cost. You say, "What's the total price of that warranty?" Force them to say $1,500 instead of $19 a month. It changes how you evaluate it. Page 43. The artificial urgency and scarcity script. Here it is. This is the one that made me realize I needed to talk about this publicly. Page 43 is titled, Creating Urgency Through Perceived Scarcity, and it's a step-by-step guide on how to lie to customers to pressure them into buying. I'm going to read you the exact language from the manual. If the customer is hesitating or asking for time to think, introduce scarcity to force a decision. Use phrases like, "I have another customer coming back this afternoon to look at this one," or "This price is only good today because of the rebate structure," or "We only have one of these left in this color." The goal is to make the customer believe that waiting will cost them the car or the deal, even if neither is true. It then gives you specific lines to use. "I've got another couple coming in at 3 to test drive this one. If you want it, we should probably move forward now. The rebate ends tonight, so if we don't get this done today, the price goes up $1,500 tomorrow. We've got 3 people looking at this car. I can't hold it unless you put a deposit down." And here's the part that made me sick. The manual says, it doesn't matter if any of this is true. The customer can't verify it, and by the time they could, the deal will already be closed. That's not an exaggeration. That's not me paraphrasing. That's what's written in the training manual. It tells you to lie about other customers, lie about rebates, lie about inventory, and lie about pricing deadlines, because the customer has no way to fact-check you in the moment, and the urgency will push them into a decision they weren't ready to make. I used these lines for years. We've got someone else looking at this one. Complete fabrication. The price is only good today. The price was good all week. This is the last one in this color. We had 3 more in the back lot, and it worked. Customers would panic, thinking they were going to lose the deal, and they'd agree to terms they weren't comfortable with just to lock it in. The counter to this is the simplest and the hardest. You have to be willing to walk away. When they hit you with urgency and scarcity, you say, "If that's true, then I'm not the right buyer for this car. I'm not making a decision under pressure," and you get up and leave. Half the time, they'll stop you before you get to the door, and suddenly the other customer doesn't exist anymore. The rebate's been extended, and the price is still available. The other half, you walk and you find another car. Because a dealership that uses fake scarcity to pressure you is a dealership you don't want to do business with anyway. The objection handlers and the scripted comebacks. Pages 52 through 68. This section is just a list of every objection a customer might raise and the scripted response to overcome it. And I mean everything. Customer says the price is too high. Script says, "I understand. What if I could show you how the total cost of ownership is actually lower than the competition?" Redirect from price to value. Customer says they need to think about it. Script says, "I completely understand. What specifically do you need to think about? Maybe I can help clarify." Force them to articulate the objection so you can address it. Customer says they want to shop around. Script says, "That makes sense. What are you hoping to find at another dealership that we haven't offered here?" Create doubt about whether shopping will actually benefit them. Every objection has a pre-written response designed to keep the customer engaged and moving toward the sale. And the manual tells you to practice these until they sound natural, until you can deliver them without thinking, until the customer believes you're responding authentically when you're really just running a script. I had these memorized. A customer would raise an objection, and I'd fire back with the handbook response without even processing what they'd said, because I wasn't listening to solve their problem. I was listening to identify which script to deploy. If you're in a negotiation and the salesperson's responses sound too smooth, too rehearsed, too perfect, that's because they are. They're reading from the manual, and the way you beat a script is you go off script. You ask questions they're not prepared for. What's your cost on this car? How long has this been on the lot? What's your average markup on this model? They don't have scripted answers for those because the manual doesn't prepare them to defend the dealership's numbers. It only prepares them to defend the customer's objections. The manager turnover and the good cop/bad cop close. Page 74. This one's a classic, and it's still in the manual because it still works. It's called the TO, the turnover. When the salesperson can't close you, they bring in the manager, and the manual lays out exactly how this is supposed to work. The script says, "If the customer is resistant, excuse yourself to speak with your manager. When you return, bring the manager with you." The manager's role is to reframe the negotiation and create the perception that they have more authority to offer concessions. The salesperson becomes the ally, and the manager becomes the decision maker. This dynamic makes the customer more likely to compromise because they feel like they're negotiating with someone who can actually make the deal happen. And then it gives you the lines. Manager comes over, introduces themselves, says, "I understand you're looking at the Camry. Beautiful car. My guy here says you're close, but we're just a little apart on numbers. Let me see what I can do." They look at the worksheet, make a big show of adjusting something, and come back with an offer that's maybe $500 better than what the salesperson offered. The customer thinks they won because the manager gave them a better deal. What actually happened is the manager was always authorized to go lower, the salesperson just wasn't. And the whole thing was theater designed to make you feel like you fought your way to a better number when you really just got what they were willing to give you all along. I brought managers in on deals constantly, and the customer would always soften when the manager got involved because they thought they were finally talking to someone with power. They weren't. The manager was just running the next phase of the script. When the manager comes over, you don't soften. You say, "I appreciate you coming over, but if you're just going to offer what your salesperson couldn't authorize, that's not helpful. What's your absolute bottom line on this car? And let's save both of us some time." You're cutting through the performance and forcing them to give you the real number instead of walking you through the stage negotiation. The close and the assumptive language. Page 89. This is the final push. The manual says, never ask the customer if they want to buy the car. Assume the sale and move directly to paperwork. Use phrases like, let's get you into this one today, or I'll have them start prepping the car for delivery, or what day works best for you to pick this up. If the customer corrects you, address the objection and return to assumptive language. The goal is to make saying no harder than saying yes. This technique works because most people are conflict averse. If the salesperson's already acting like the deal's done, it feels awkward to stop them. It feels like you're backing out of something you already agreed to, even though you didn't. And that social pressure is enough to push a lot of people over the line. I'd start talking about delivery before the customer had agreed to buy. Okay, great. Let me get the keys, and we'll start the paperwork. And the customer would just follow along because the momentum was already moving in that direction, and it felt harder to stop it than to keep going. The way you counter this is you stop the process the second it starts. When they start using assumptive language, you say, hold on, I haven't agreed to buy this car yet. We're still negotiating. You reset the frame. You make it clear that nothing's decided until you say it's decided. Here's what I want you to understand about this manual. It's not a guide to helping customers. It's a guide to manipulating them. Every technique, every script, every psychological tactic is designed to push you toward a decision that benefits the dealership, not you. And it's taught to every single salesperson who works on that floor. I spent 20 years running these plays. I memorized these scripts. I practiced these closes until they were second nature. And I used them on people who trusted me, people who thought I was helping them. People who had no idea they were being worked through a system that was designed from the first handshake to extract maximum profit. I'm not saying salespeople are bad people. Most of them are just trying to make a living. But the system they're operating in is predatory. And that system is codified in this manual. It's taught in training, it's reinforced by management, and it's executed on every customer who walks through the door. The only defense is to know it exists, to recognize the scripts when you hear them, to understand the techniques when they are being run on you, because once you know the playbook, you can't be manipulated by it. I kept this manual because I thought maybe one day I'd need to remember why I left. I'm sharing it now because you need to know what you're up against. Watch the next video if you want more insider tips.